It's 10:30 something, or 31. So I'm going to call this meeting of the New York State Cemetery Board to order. I'm Mark Patterson, and I'm representing Secretary of State, Acting Secretary of State Robert Rodriguez. This meeting is an in-person meeting, but unfortunately, one of our colleagues, Jill Favors, unable to attend. She may join us later. She won't be able to vote because we noticed this is an in-person meeting, but she may want to comment or participate in a conversation. So let me introduce my colleague, Tom.
Tom Fuller, representing Dr. Mary Bassett, Commissioner of Health.
And as I said, Jill Favor, who will be late if she's able to attend at all, represents the Attorney General, Letitia James. So I don't think I have any other, just general comments. This meeting, as we've done in the past, WebEx is being recorded. If you're on the line, please mute your line unless you're speaking. And later, when there's an opportunity for public comment, please identify yourself. That's helpful when you're speaking, so we can keep track of the minutes. And there are some rules about if you're a lobbyist, you're required to identify yourself. Others are just we're requesting it. I'll take up the issue of the minutes of our previous meeting. We have minutes that were distributed to board members. Does anybody have any comments or suggestions to the minutes as distributed?
I have none.
I had none. So I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the previous meeting.
I'll second that.
Will you? Good thing. All in favor?
Aye.
This is going to be fun. Okay. Yes, minutes are approved. Our counsel, I didn't introduce people in the room, but Rob Vandalism is our counsel. Louis Polishuk is our director. We have two of the staff, Alicia and Carrie, for staff here. Rob, do you have a legislation and regulations report? You did mail out.
I did. I circulated the legislative report. There were no changes, but if there are any questions, I'm happy to try to answer them.
Again, we're sort of taking the tack these days that people who get these things can read, and so we don't have to go over them all unless there's something significant that's popped up. So thank you for that. Is there anything updated on the regulations?
I'm working internally to draft the required notices for the notice of adoption, but that's yet to appear in the state register.
Okay, fabulous. So hopefully that'll keep moving forward, and we'll have them out as soon as possible. Anybody have any questions of Rob for his on his legislation and regulations report? All right, Louis, do you have a division report?
Actually, I'm just going to call your attention to one thing on the legislative report. I mentioned this to Rob also. One of the bills that was out there last year as well seeks to do away with our net appreciation calculation and replace it with a form of total return investing, which is used for trusts other than cemetery trusts in New York to pull out a percentage of the total every year as opposed to distinguishing between principal and income. I'm the president, actually, of the North American Death Care Regulators Association. On our most recent call, there was a lot of chatter about this, as several states have moved to allow total return investing. Others are thinking about it. Others are thinking we don't like the idea. And so there's just a lot of, it's a bit of a hot topic in the field as a whole. Saying nothing about where this particular bill is going, but there's a lot of chatter out there about that. And it's something we're paying attention to, and at the appropriate moment, I guess the board should be paying attention, but not yet. Just wanted you to know it's out there.
Okay.
On the division report on staffing, I have good news and bad news. The good news is we have an accepted offer for our investigator in Buffalo, who's supposed to start March 3rd. Bad news is we had yet another senior accountant candidate turn us down. And the way the civil service rules work, we can now interview more candidates. So we're going to be reaching out to them. Hopefully they're actually interested. Hopefully they won't turn us down. Hopefully there's someone qualified out there. But we have 2 senior accountant vacancies in Albany that we just cannot seem to fill.
Okay.
So that was the staffing update. Just a reminder, annual report season, annual reports are due March 31st for most cemeteries. We definitely have seen, after Bridget Coleman made a series of calls to cemeteries that haven't filed, we've definitely seen an uptick in filings. We have fewer cemeteries that are delinquent, so please keep up the good work and keep filing with us. When we get to that point, I'm going to have there was an item we were going to discuss in executive session. It's not ready for executive session, but there's probably something we can talk about in public session. It'll be on Mount Olivet, an update, but I'll wait until we finish the business that's actually on the agenda.
Okay. And I'll just say that we certainly encourage filing online for annual reports. I know that that's a process, but people are more and more able to do it, and it is work saving for us and error saving for everybody. So please, if you can, file your annual reports online. Okay. Anybody have any questions for Louis for his division report? Okay. So we'll move to our vandalism fund report, and then we'll move to vandalism orders. Alicia?
Vandalism collections for calendar year 2022 are $87,296. Assessment collections are $25,018.
Alicia, because of the mask, can you just speak up? Or,
Fiscal year collections from April 1st, 2021 are vandalism $227,823 and assessments $103.96. Payments from the $2 million appropriation for this fiscal year total $393,561. We have applications in the pipeline for $239,652.60. Today's agenda, there are 2 applications totaling $96,920.57, and we have approved $543,477.08 this fiscal year for restoration applications.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Alicia and her report? Again, just to all of us, because we're in person and masked, remind each other to speak up if they can't be heard. And I do think it's okay to, if you need to have it speak. Okay, so we have 2 applications for our vandalism fund. The first is Mount Pleasant Cemetery in Madison County in the amount of $19,295.17. We have someone present that application.
Mike, you on?
Yeah, this is Mike Seelman with the division. We received the application from Mount Pleasant Cemetery in Madison County. They requested approval of 24 hazardous monuments. I had a discussion with the cemetery as far as the legal notice that was submitted, and they reviewed their cemetery records, and they also reviewed their donor list, and they were unable to locate information on any of the monuments, or the lot owners, monument owners, for the monuments that we're looking at here. So based upon the information that they provided, it's our understanding that they have determined that the monument owners cannot be found. Therefore, they posted a legal notice in an attempt to contact them. They've had no response from that legal notice. I went out and looked at the monuments in question, and all 24 appeared to be eligible. They only received one estimate, and that was from Paxton Memorials. The average price on that is $797 per monument, which is very reasonable for the area. And they received a letter declining bid from another contractor. And I've recommended that the board approve this in the amount of $1,295.17.
Thank you, Mike. Anything else to add, Louis? Rob, do you have any questions on this?
No questions, only if the board does approve it, recommend that that be approval be subject to the availability of funds.
Thank you. Okay, so if there are no other questions, I'll make a motion to approve the application of Mount Pleasant Cemetery in Madison County in the amount of $19,295.17, subject to the availability of funds.
I'll second that.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Motion carries. The next application is from Rest Haven Cemetery in Ontario County
Mike, that's you too, right?
in the amount of $77,625.40. Go ahead, Mike.
Rest Haven Cemetery is in Ontario County. They applied for repair of 54 monuments. I went out and I reviewed the monuments and found that only 45 of them appeared to be eligible based on, did they appear to be hazardous? I spoke to the cemetery president and he agreed that those monuments did not appear to apply. I discussed the records of the cemetery, and he also agreed that that cemetery did not have records for these lot owners in this old area. So based on the information that the cemetery provided, it's the division's understanding that the cemetery has determined that the monument owners cannot be found. As such, the cemetery ran an ad in the Finger Lakes Times. They have not received any response to that. I have recommended that the 45 monuments that appeared hazardous be recommended for approval in the amount of $77,625.40.
Louis, anything else to add there? No? And Rob, anything that you'd like to add?
Thank you, Mark. Two matters. One, the notice period is 60 days. It runs from the date of last publication. That 60-day period will expire February 18th. So if the board does approve this application now, I would recommend that the approval be contingent upon no one coming forward to make the repairs until February 18th. And second, if the board approves the application, to make that approval be subject to the availability of funds.
Thank you, Rob.
Yeah, nobody's doing any work before February 18th.
Well, we'll make it clear in the resolution. If there are no other questions for,
Just a quick question for Mike. I noticed that, the first one we talked about, it was, you said the price was on the low side. But I noticed the average monument price here, cost is close to $1,000 higher. These counties are not that far apart. Is there an explanation for why there's such a disparity?
Regionally, they're not all that far apart, but we do see a difference in price based on region, and it's really based on the number of contractors that are in the area. I will say that many of the monuments in the Rest Haven application are very large monuments. 6, 7, 8 feet tall or taller, and that definitely affects the price.
Okay, thank you.
it's, I don't know if it's the right time, but either for Louis or Mike, we've seen a slowdown in applications. I think we attribute it to sort of the pandemic workforce issues. Do we see any change in that? Is there any turnaround in availability of contractors? It was always a problem even before the pandemic, but
That I don't know. Mike, do you have any sense of that?
it would just be a sense, I suppose.
I have talked to monument dealers that have said that they're extremely busy, not just with this type of work, but actually selling and setting granite, that there has been an uptick in that activity. And you can see that in the first application. The two contractors that do a lot of work in Madison County are Texton and Kellogg. And Kellogg, in their letter, they said that they would not even be able to begin work on something like this until next year. They're that busy. So I don't know that helps, but they
No,
are.
I'm just curious, and
Yeah.
again, confirming that it's a sort of a workforce issue. Hopefully that, well, I don't know if we care if it's temporary or not, it just is. Okay, so I'll make a motion to approve the application of Rest Haven Cemetery for hazardous monument repair in the amount of $77,000, 625 cents, $625.40, contingent on they're waiting for the notice to run for the full 60 days, which will be February 18th, and contingent on availability of funds. So a second?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Terrific. Let's move on to the other applications. We have an application from McLean Cemetery. It's a major renovation. Somebody want to present that?
Brandon, is this you?
Yeah, this is Brendan Stant with the division, and I've got this application for McLean Cemetery of the town of Groton in Tompkins County. It appears to be a very small application at this point, and it is, but I think it speaks to the importance of going through this process. Originally, we were contacted by the cemetery, and they wanted to reconstruct a mostly disused receiving vault that is in disrepair, and presented some wildly different ballpark estimates. We told them that it appeared to be a major renovation pursuant to section 201.16. We provided them with the paperwork and the necessary documents that they needed to complete. We received an incomplete application in July, which still did not include actual estimates for the costs, but had increased the cost substantially already at that point. We let them know that that application was incomplete and what we would need to consider that. Unfortunately, the cemetery at some point between the submission of that application and my visit on December 14th of last year, the cemetery began that project without waiting for approval. At which point I issued a notice of non-compliance. I instructed them to stop working. To the best of my knowledge, they have done so. And they have now provided us with some sort of substantiation and estimates for the project, which now appears to be approximately $3,000, which will come entirely from the cemetery's general fund. At this point, it seems like a reasonable project, and I recommend approval.
Anybody have any questions for Brendan? Rob, do you have any comments on this application?
No comments from council.
Okay. I don't think I have any other comments. I'll make a motion to approve this application from McLean Cemetery for major renovations and what I heard to be the amount of about $3,000 from the general fund for a repair. There was a second.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. And I appreciate the cemetery working with us to stay in compliance. We have two applications from Forest Lawn and other cemeteries for mergers. I'll take the first one. I'll do them both at one time. Forest Lawn Cemetery and Attica for a merger. As if there's, someone staff who's gonna present this.
Sure, I'll do it, just give me 1 second, I wanna make sure I have the numbers in front of me. So Attica Cemetery, so this is Forest Lawn's first venture outside of Erie County. Attica is in nearby Wyoming County. The two cemeteries have had discussions for a long time. I think this is one of the first cemeteries that Forest Lawn approached about a possible merger. Attica is approximately a 30-acre cemetery. It's, I would say financially, it's somewhat marginal. Some years it's made money and some years it's lost money. The board is all volunteer, they're aging. There's no real clear succession plan for the board as it is. And they concluded that Forest Lawn, merging with Forest Lawn is their best option rather than trying to limp along or hopefully reaching out and getting for abandoning the town. Again, just a couple of things to flag. The plan of merger did not, at least in our view, contain everything that the new statute requires, but Forest Lawn presented all of information about all of the issues that are required to be presented in the plan. In meeting with the Attica board, the application discloses that they've addressed all of those. The Attica board has acknowledged, yeah, we knew all about that stuff. We had that information before us. And as we did with Lancaster, I would recommend overlooking this issue and saying that they've substantially, that they've got, that there's, even though the plan itself, the plan document itself doesn't have all the stuff we want, they had everything before them that they needed to make an informed decision and did. You know, it's, I'm not sure what to add. Basically, we think that this is probably the least bad option for the cemetery. And we think that Forest Lawn likely could make a go of this and make this profitable both for the existing Attica lot owners and for their own lot owners. That's all I had. I know council had some questions about the form of at least one document.
If not two.
Maybe two. Why not? Let's go for three. Why not? So that was all I had.
Anything, Karen? Rob?
Oh, sorry. There is one thing for Carrie that I should flag on this one. This is the one with the funds, right? Yeah. So there's a bunch of funds that our audit back in 2012 concluded were PC, perpetual care. We've re-reviewed the file. It's not at all clear to me that these funds are PC. Some of them appear to be true trusts, special trusts. Others of them appear to be either permanent maintenance fund in nature or trusts where the only purpose is the maintenance and preservation of the cemetery, which would essentially make them permanent maintenance funds. Forest Lawn has agreed to work with us to try to get a proper characterization of all of these funds if the merger is approved. And our idea is that as this goes either to court or to the AG, we will continue discussions with Forest Lawn as the putative owner of these funds, so that once the merger occurs, we will have an agreement as to their proper characterization status. We haven't got a formal agreement with them where they have represented that they'll be bound by our determination or anything like that, but we anticipate this being a cooperative and collaborative process. And don't think there needs to be a real condition on this. Just wanted to bring this to everyone's attention that we're going to be, assuming the board recommends approval of this, we're going to be working our way through this as the merger works its way either through the AG's office or the courts. And it's not a huge amount of money compared to Attica's permanent maintenance and general fund, but there is a not insignificant sum there that we need to make sure we get properly characterized.
Okay.
Now it's your turn. Sorry.
Thank you, Louis. Thank you, Mark. So just to pick up that note, ideally if the board does recommend approval, then the cemeteries then do move on to hypothetically Supreme Court. the cemetery board would receive notice of that petition under 1515, and then would be able to proceed with the resolution of the treatment of these funds. I do want to point out that in the draft petition included in the materials, there's a reference to treating this as perpetual care, or to put these funds into general operating funds. There isn't a reference to PM funds. So it does look like the parties do have to do some work to come to a consensus on how these funds will be treated. Moving back up to the plan of merger and notice, this is largely a repeat of November's meeting. The 60-day notice Forest Lawn provided to its lot owners did not quite reach 60 days. It was 57, not the 60 days required by 1506-D. The plan of merger does not include the number of numbers. Here I want to point out that in addition to what my fellow counsel suggested in November, counting the number of deeds, here the materials include the number of lot owners that received mailings here. And so it seems like the number of members of the corporation is readily ascertainable from the information available to us. Again, the materials state that there'd be no change to the certificate of incorporation, but because a cemetery needs to list each town and county which they're operating in, this merger was approved, there would be required to be an amendment to the certificate of incorporation. I should note that I have been in contact with counsel for one of the cemeteries who's acknowledged that requirement, and we're working through revised certificates of merger, which are included here. I'm going to recommend that the board not pass on voting on the certificate of merger, and let me just explain. A not-for-profit corporation law 1506-D puts before the cemetery board recommending approval. That is one component of what this application is. The other component is consent, and that's by operation of 909 and 404. Just generally speaking, if a not-for-profit corporation is seeking to merge, it has to go back to whatever governmental entity approved it in the first place, and under 404E, that's the cemetery board. So there's two components here. One is recommending approval of the merger. The second is consent to the certificate of merger itself. And here, I would recommend against the board consenting to the certificate of merger as presented. There are a number of issues with it. The number of members are missing. The additional municipalities in which they're operating in are missing. And again, I'm working with counsel for this one of the cemeteries to correct those issues, and theoretically that would come back before the cemetery board at a later date for that consent to the certificate of merger.
The only thing I'll add to that is you won't need another 400 pages for that. Having recommended approval, all you really need to see at that point is the form of the certificate and a recommendation.
You made a note about the availability of lot owners. Just clarify what that meant.
So the number of lot owners?
Yeah.
So so the cemeteries here decided that to provide notice to the lot owners, they conducted a mailing. And they provided materials relevant to that mailing, bulk certified mailing lists, and in follow-up with the division about those mailings, they included the number of mailings that they made. And they included that the mailings were sent to the lot owners. So it would appear that they have determined the number of lot owners, and that information could be used in the certificate of merger.
Okay. I want to just clarify why you raised that point. Okay, so is there anything else, Bob, that you'd like to add?
No, thank you.
Is there anyone here from Forest Lawn or Attica that would like to address the board on this issue?
Yes, David Fleming, representing Forest Lawn. I would just like to reiterate our discussion from November, which we discussed what was presented in the application, and at that time it was determined, and your able colleague agreed that the contents required for the application were met. This application goes back to August of 2021, so some of the discussions that have happened since then are relatively new, and the process is new, and we all acknowledge that the process is pretty new. The difference is that in many instances, we're not going back repeatedly to boards to redo. They can't afford to, and it doesn't make any sense to keep going back to them for additional changes. We provided a whole host of information, and actually this is the application right here. It's pretty significant. And acknowledge that there are specific issues related to the filing of the certificate, which is much different than the board's recommendation in support of the merger. The merger makes sense, as the division points out, for Attica and Forest Lawn. There are some financial discrepancies in the cemetery that would merge Attica merging into Forest Lawn, which Forest Lawn has absolutely agreed to work with the division to get to the bottom of some of those fund allocations, and has no problem doing that. I think that much of what your council has pointed to are technical issues related to the certificate, and obviously we're happy to come back following the board's recommendation and approval of the merger if that happens. And I would also point out that there are a couple of mergers that are in a similar situation. They've been in the queue since August. Some of the things that have come up since then really are new, and will have to be addressed as we go forward. Happy to answer any specific questions.
Okay, well, I think my only other comment is that I think the board has been clear that it supports the concept of mergers as one of the ways in which we will help some cemeteries be sustainable. It's not new, but it is newly authorized, I guess. So we went through a process there where it was not authorized, or determined not to be authorized. I appreciate the fact that some of these applications are old, and the question is, does it meet the test? I think the division has determined that it meets the test of the
In this case, yes.
in this case, the application. And these are all things that are sort of new to both the division and to the cemeteries. Obviously, at some point, we certainly want to make sure we do our due diligence to make sure that this is in the interest of both cemeteries. And we want to make sure we get it right in the final. So if there's no other questions, I would make a recommendation. You can help me here, Rob. I don't know if I need to make two resolutions or not. One would be to recommend the merger of Forest Lawn and Attica. And I don't know if I have to say something about the certificate of participation or just be silent on that.
I think for the purposes of providing clarity, perhaps to make clear that the board is not voting on the proposed certificate of merger at this time.
And so that is a separate resolution or included in this?
I think either one works.
Okay. I'll continue my motion to recommend the approval of the merger, but to make it clear that we are not voting on or approving the certificate of participation. Certificate of merger. At the time, it will come back to us. We'll work with the cemeteries to perfect that certificate. Do you have a second? Is that sufficient, Rob?
Yes.
Have a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
The motion, the application for the Forest Lawn Cemetery with Attica is recommended. The next one is Forest Lawn Cemetery and the Quaker Settlement Cemetery for the purposes of merger.
So for this one, I'm just going to highlight the differences between this and the Attica merger. This cemetery is a very small cemetery, also located in Wyoming County. It is marginally profitable. The problem is, again, the trustees are not really, they don't have a plan to keep the cemetery going in terms of having volunteers to run it for the long term. The main difference is here that Quaker settlement is all but sold out. There's only a relatively small number, I want to say a quarter of an acre, doing this from memory, of graves left. Then again, they only sell a couple of years, so that should last a while. Their income, they make a teeny bit of income, they have a teeny bit of expenses. Forest Lawn projects that their income on this cemetery will exceed the expenses upon merger, but this is really, there's really next to no upside to Forest Lawn from this merger, but there's even less downside. And for the cemetery, the upside is, since this is largely going to be a maintenance operation, the upside is they feel more confident with a cemetery running it than the town, and the town has indicated that they're really not so excited about having to maintain another cemetery, even though in this case the maintenance is really pretty minimal. So there isn't, the short of it is, there isn't a hugely compelling case in favor of this, but the case against it is even less compelling. And on balance, if that's what the parties want to do, there's a little bit of upside and no downside to it, so we're recommending approval. Again, Rob will probably go through the legal issues, but the certificate of merger here has the same issues that the certificate of merger in Attica does, so we would recommend that the board not consent to the filing of the certificate of merger at present, with the idea that that'll get fixed before either the Attorney General or the court is done considering the merger. And there's no issue with the funds here. There's none of that stuff that we have with Attica.
All right, Russell?
Thank you, Mark. Running through the same issues, the notice to the lot owners for the lot owners meeting was not 60 days. The plan of merger did not include the number of members. It did not include the municipalities that the merged cemetery would operate in.
You mean the certificate of merger?
Well,
Both.
oh, no, you're right, certificate of merger. Plan of merger not listing the number of members. The certificate of merger not listing the municipalities and the number of members. And as I stated, already, 1506-D, the cemetery board is recommending or not recommending approval of the merger, and consent to the certificate of merger would be separate and not be recommending that the cemetery board pass on that.
The only other thing I'll add that I neglected to add is taken together, Forest Lawn's concept, as I understand it, is to adopt a cluster model where they're going to have cemeteries in a certain area all come under them. These two cemeteries are relatively close to each other, and I think they're at least, they may not be the whole cluster, but they're at least the beginnings of a Wyoming County cluster for Forest Lawn. And approving the two of them together, they could potentially realize some of those savings from economies of scale.
Anything further, Rob?
No, Mark, thank you.
Does someone from Forest Lawn or Quaker Settlement like to address the board?
Yes, please. David Fleming for Forest Lawn. Just want to touch on a couple of points, and I've already addressed the other issues which we're moving forward with, and substantially have already been addressed in the previous application. I do want to point out a couple things that Mr. Polishuk touched on and in the review. The difference here is that Quaker Settlement has over $120,000 in funds, which is a significant contribution to Forest Lawn and their assets and their ability to bring in additional funding. And as we've talked about at previous meetings, the whole concept of a cluster model is, yes, saving money on just consolidating services, but it's also about increasing the available revenue for all the cemeteries within the cluster, because you have Forest Lawn's funds, which are professionally managed and doing quite well. This would be added to the $31 million that Forest Lawn already has in their funds, and will yield significantly more, we believe, than Quaker Settlement is currently bringing in, which will aid their operation. But I'd also like to point out that as the division's recommendation outlines, the Quaker Settlement has no essentially consumer outreach or the ability to have an office. Forest Lawn provides a 24/7 operation. It's professionally managed. They have the ability to provide that outreach to the lot owners in a way that will be significantly improved over what they currently have, as even outlined by the division. And while there is less land available, the difference with Forest Lawn's product models is that they provide more, they have a larger number of options for lot owners. So they're not, they can move forward with an application for a columbarium. They can move forward with an application for other products. They provide additional burial rights within existing lots so that lot owners can maximize. Obviously, that brings in service revenue to the cemetery. And so, they've done a significant analysis with their board and both boards and believe that this is the best option for both cemeteries. Thank you.
Okay, you know why the notice is just short of 60 days?
The notice issue was brought up previously. It was a meeting that was held. I'm not sure they were posted, and I'm not sure that we have an understanding as to why that's the case. But it has been significantly more than 60 days since that period.
I understand that, but it's sort of anomalous. Okay, so this would be a repeat. I'll make a motion. If there's any other questions, Tom? No. I will make a motion to recommend the merger between Forest Lawn Cemetery and Quaker Settlement Cemetery, and note that we are not voting, we're not approving or consenting to the certificate of merger at this time. And
I'll second that.
second that, that's sufficient, Rob?
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. You said you're gonna add
Yeah,
Mount Olivet?
yeah, there's nothing for the board to do here, this is just an update. Their time to respond to our, to renew their objection to our notice of proposed penalties ran out on January 31st. They got us a submission on January 28th. I haven't shared it with the board yet because it raised some additional questions. We posed additional questions. Council and I reviewed it. We posed additional questions to the cemetery. We're waiting on a response. I anticipate getting that within the next 2 weeks or so, by which point we should have something to consider for the March meeting. Just wanted to let you know, it hasn't fallen off the agenda. It's just something that we're kind of going back and forth with them on needing some more information.
Any questions, Tom?
I mean, overall, the direction seems to be positive, and they do seem to be putting structures in place to keep future misappropriations of funds from happening.
Sounds like a plan. Rob, would you add anything to that?
No.
Is there anything else that we need to add to the agenda?
We need a brief update in non-public session about the Frederick Douglass litigation.
Is that covered by the opens meeting law or is it an exemption?
So that would be meeting exemption of the meetings law for the purposes of this confidential communication of attorney advice.
So if I understand, part of the difference of that is that in that case, we could adjourn the meeting before we did that.
Correct.
And then people don't have to hang
And
around.
people don't have to hang around because we will not, under any circumstances, come out with any action to be taken, right?
Correct.
The next board meeting is
March 8th.
March 8th. And I will now open the floor to anyone who wishes to comment on anything that's been before the board or is subject to the board. Does anybody wish to address the board?
No one online will, I will.
Thank God.
I don't want to disappoint you, I know. David Folling from the New York State Association of Cemeteries. I just wanted to touch on two issues, and they both relate to cemetery operations. One, the chairman talked about and inquired about monument repair, and obviously we've been encouraging our members to submit applications in the current fiscal year. We're thankful that the governor has proposed continuing the $2 million allocation for the fund, and that's helpful. But we are seeing it as someone pointed out earlier, there is, now that folks are scheduling work, it is very difficult to get people to bid on projects, and they are putting them off significantly, which would be outside this fiscal year. So that has been a challenge for cemeteries as they're trying to do some of this monument repair. Also, just so the board is aware, what we have been seeing in the last 4 months as cemeteries are preparing projects that are going to come before the board, that cost escalations are just absolutely massive. When you're looking at, I mean, any homeowner understands that if they go to the home building supply store or trying to hire a contractor around their own home, these even bigger projects are becoming very expensive. So I just want to prepare you as you start seeing applications come before the board that those prices, as Mr. Fuller pointed out, you were looking at some of those charges in the monument repairs. I think the construction ones, the applications that involve construction are going to be significantly higher than you're used to seeing, just because that cost is getting passed down to the lot owners. Thank you.
Feel your pain. Okay. Anybody else wishing to address the board? If not, then what I will do is make a motion to to adjourn the meeting and to move to a meeting of the board to discuss legal matters, which is an exemption to the open meetings law, or something close to that. Have a second?
No, second.
All in favor? Thank you all. All aye, and thank you all for coming. Very efficient.